to go. We're live. And it's amazing because we are live in 3 countries. So Ali, welcome back from Iran, from Yazd, Iran, which is,
Hello.
did you tell me 2.5
you.
hour drive from Tehran?
It's about 6 hours drive
Six
to Tehran.
hours drive from Tehran.
Yeah, quite far.
Marguerite, you're about an hour outside of Vienna, in the suburbs of Vienna.
About an hour.
Yep.
Yeah.
And live from New York, Catherine and Dan from New York City. And we are going to spend our time going back with Marguerite, Catherine, and Dan to a country that so many people may not typically choose to visit. But what we're hoping is, through this whole endeavor of Travel Unites Us, is open people's minds to the incredible beauty that's out there that maybe you haven't seen in a travel and leisure, article. Maybe you've seen it, but you haven't crossed the threshold of, wow, that's intriguing to me. It's totally different than what I would have thought have. And listening to other people having visited that country, now I'm more likely to cross that threshold and visit. And both Daniel and Catherine, as well as Marguerite, have gone that journey with us, which is why we've asked them to join Ali and help us understand how they got to that place, what motivated them, any of the myths that they had before they got there, and what they found when they got there, both in terms of the physical experience, the beautiful sights, the food, the music, but also the people, because that ultimately, I think, is what travel is all about, is connecting with other people and feeling this place in some kind of context that only human beings can help you feel. So Catherine and Dan, I've heard a little bit of your story. If you can recount it for us. You, Catherine, had bumped into some people while you were traveling, and they sort of posed the idea of Iran in your head. So can you walk us through that? What was that? How did that happen? And how did you and Dan, eventually decide, yeah, we're going?
So I honestly had really never thought about going. I actually didn't think I would be able to go. I thought due to visa restrictions, they just wouldn't grant one. And I thought particularly to me, due to some circumstances and some familial history, that I wouldn't be able to get there. But I met an American and an Australian who had both, Australian, who had both been, and they both told me about how wonderful it was and how it was the greatest place. And after that, I met a few more people. And so I kind of started looking into it. I came across some blog, I think, who pointed me in the direction of Ali. And I reached out to him, I think, in like March of, 2019. And then texted Dan and was kind of like, you want to go to Iran? And he happened to say yes. And yeah, then I guess 9 months later, we were there.
Dan, when you first heard Catherine, when she first texted you, did you have any trepidation when you kind of like, Iran, really? Or were you just wholeheartedly in on it?
Actually, from the start, pretty wholeheartedly in. So the moment that that Catherine reached out to it, I have a couple colleagues who had gone in the past, and they said amazing things. And then I guess, yeah, similar to Catherine, I didn't think it was going to be possible. My only caveat was if they'd let us go, as an American and as an American Jew who's been to Israel and all of that. But I think once we started the process and got in touch with Ali was, great at making us feel pretty relaxed about it. And yeah, I was pretty gung-ho from the start.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing, Ali was WhatsApping us, and it was so easy to do. And every point along the way, when we had questions about the visa, when we didn't know where to send it, when we had to send our resume and weren't sure, what to include and what not to include, he was always there answering all of our questions, which made it really quite easy.
I've only gone through the visa process for China, and that was fairly complicated. And as a journalist, I was scrutinized beyond belief. So I kind of understand a little bit of that. And then you've just got the whole concept that, Iran and the United States really don't have formal relationships. So you've got to go through a different embassy, I think, or.
Yeah, you have to go through the Pakistani embassy.
Right. So some challenges there, but you still do it. We're going to come back to Dan and Catherine. How about you, Marguerite? You live in Austria. I think there's a different culture towards international travel to places. And certainly I don't think Austrians have the same sort of local, politics with Iran that America does have. What was the motivator for you to go to Iran, and what was the context that got you to first consider it? And then if you did have any sort of challenges or issues, how did you overcome them?
Well, I will try to make it somehow small, not to tell too many things.
Okay.
Since very young time, since my very young years, I always wanted to travel to Iran. I don't know why, but somehow the architecture, those turquoise mosques, especially of Esfahan, they always caught me. And I always had the feeling I want to go there. And it came that I have very good friends in Turkey since I'm 13. It started with a pen friendship, and we're still in contact. So most of the time I was always traveling to Turkey. So the next step to go a country beyond was somehow very logical. And 2 years ago, it was almost 3 years ago, I met a very good friend from Belgium, who is friend of my very good old Turkish friend. She's taking care of young Afghan refugees in Brussels. So one of those young boys had family, or still has family, in Isfahan, and she wanted to go there in 2018 already. And then I thought, well, a chance, we can go together. But 2018, somehow it didn't work out. And so we went there last year. And I could convince another friend of mine. And of course, how would it say, even if Austria and Iran don't have these difficult relationships that Iran and US has, but still, I think a very small percentage of people are considering traveling to Iran from here.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Ali,
I got, are you sure? Are you crazy? Can't you travel to normal places?
Ali, your business, how much of it's made up of, say, either North Americans or Western Europeans? Is it mostly North Americans and Western Europeans?
You mean most of the tourists that visit Iran?
That come to you?
Most of the tourists that we receive are Europeans. On the top of the list, there are Germans. I mean, German-speaking countries,
right.
And then French, and then let's say Spanish and Italians.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, I think it's Chinese. We receive most of the tourists from these countries.
Right. And before I go back to Marguerite, Catherine, and Dan, what are some of the questions that you get when people first engage with you about, they're piqued with their interest? And if you can put it in a broad context, are there any misconceptions that you immediately have to sort of walk them off the ledge, or no?
I mean, on my end, absolutely. I think everyone I worked with was like, why would you go there? What are you doing? I had been in Pakistan the month before, and that was enough. They were all skeptical enough. Even my parents, my mom was like, don't even tell me you're going. My dad was like, oh, that's great. Like, have fun. But I think overall, there's a huge misunderstanding within, I would say, the general public on what the country is and what it's not.
Yeah. So let's go to a couple of pictures now. I'm going to go to share the screen, and we're going to first take a look at a beautiful picture. If I can, hold on a second. Let me make sure I've got it ready to pull up before I go there, because Marguerite, you have some amazing pictures. So now let me go there. So this is a very popular scene. Marguerite, this is from Shiraz, and Dan and Catherine have there's a picture that Ali sent me. I think it's got Dan and Catherine. Describe to me Shiraz. What was the city like to you?
Just amazing, like all the cities we have visited. The problem was, I I think I put too many cities into a very small, very short time period. So I think we have to repeat it once again to spend a little bit more time in each individual city.
And what are we looking at here? What is this castle? If Marguerite, Ali, and I'm going to go to Catherine and Dan because they have a picture I'm going to show in a second. What is this castle? And describe to us a little bit of what is Shiraz. I've read a little bit about it, but I am quite not the tourist guide.
I think Ali would be the best to describe it.
So Ali, what are we looking at here?
Sure. This is the downtown of Shiraz. The citadel is called Karim Khan Citadel. It's like 300 years. That was the center of the government. The ruler of Shiraz, Karim Khan, who is famous as one of the kindest and one of the best kings of Iran in 300 years ago, that was ruling in Shiraz. And he's called, as he has a title, which is Vakil, means the servant of the people. He used to live, very humble, and he gave a lot of great services to the people of Shiraz at the time. And at that time, our economy, Iran economy, was very prosperous. We had a lot of contacts with Western businessmen. Since Iran was part of the Silk Road, a lot of traders, foreign traders, used to travel to Iran and Shiraz, and the king, Karim Khan, used to serve them and welcome them in his palace. So it was also his living place.
Yeah. So he was a humble king. That's quite unusual. So does this picture?
Yeah, very unusual.
Does this picture look familiar?
It does. So we also got to experience Shiraz, and I think exactly what Ali said. One of the most interesting and the coolest parts of the city for me was the history, where you really do just get the layers of the dynasties and kind of where that history took place, and you get to see it. And I think one of maybe even more exciting than the city itself is nearby. If you have any of the pictures of Persepolis or anything like that, then that was a very, very cool experience. And blending that with the modern life in Shiraz was also really interesting.
Ali, I don't know if any of the pictures from Persepolis are here, so I'm not sure if you did send me those. I've got quite a few pictures.
We keep it a mystery then for everyone to go.
So I already sent you too much pictures. I don't remember.
Now, Ali, is this tour guide? This is somebody who works for you, because that's not you.
Yeah, it's Mohammad Reza. It's one of our best guides. We are already working with like 30 tourist guides and drivers. And to be honest, he's one of the best. Very honest, very friendly. And we are really proud to have such a great, friendly, and knowledgeable guide.
What I love about this picture is it reminds me of my own little coffee shop here in Cornwall, New York. I feel like when I saw this picture, I'm home. And in fact, you are invited to study in English is written on that shelf above Catherine's head. I mean, it feels so welcoming. Catherine and Dan, and I'll come back to Marguerite in a second. What did it feel like? Did you ever feel like you were still at home, so to speak, in neighborhoods that felt relatively familiar?
The funny thing is, not in this cafe. This cafe was a super interesting one because it was actually in the middle of a bridge. And so this was actually and there was a beautiful view, and they had games and things like that.
And it was very warm.
True.
We were or I was very cold prior to going in. So getting a milkshake was a bold move. Felt necessary for us.
Yeah, I think they looked at us funny for that. But yeah, no, to answer your question, in other places, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there were elements of both kind of Western and Middle Eastern culture mixed together. And so, in the bazaars and things like that, it's a little less familiar for us. But
Right.
then in the cafes and other places, I mean, we would feel in restaurants completely at home and normal. And so it was a really cool mix of those experiences.
It's my only connection to Iran is my cousin David is an engineer, and he worked there for several years prior to the Ayatollah returning in 79, 80. And David had said to me that as the rumblings in the local newspapers were picking up, he was working for some companies as a consultant. And a friend of his, an Iranian, came to him and said, "It's time for you to leave." And David, to this day, is indebted to this gentleman who said, "Look, you got to get out. This is not going to be pretty when the Ayatollah returns." And David, fondness for the humanity of people across religions and faiths and politics has always stood with me ever since he told me that back in the 80s. I've always said to myself, I will never demonize the Iranian people, because I know everybody's the same, and people, when they befriend somebody, just there's the borders just come crashing down. Did you ever, Marguerite, have similar experiences? I'm not as certain where in your pictures to go, so I'm going to go to your Shiraz pictures, and if you can,
Yes.
I'm going to go back to you. If you can try to help me find some more of the local Shiraz pictures. Am I going this way?
Be
Is
difficult.
this Shiraz?
Yes, this is Shiraz.
So walk us through with Ali. Obviously, that's back to the castle. So I'm going to go a little bit further back. What is this unbelievably gorgeous place?
That's the entrance to the Pink Mosque in Shiraz, and it's absolutely fabulous. It's really fabulous if you are there.
Are those tiles? What makes that beautiful mosaic? I don't know what you call it.
I
What
don't know if you find a picture from the inside of the
Mhm.
mosque,
Yeah.
and if you are there early morning when the light comes in, then it's absolutely gorgeous if you are standing in front of the windows. The lighting is absolutely fantastic.
Ali, are those tiles made out of like some kind of ceramic?
They're mosaic tiles.
Mm.
Yes, they have not. It's the design of the nature flowers. They're all beauties, which is trying to show the symbol of the most beautiful things, which is the symbol of God. Okay, and the color pink prevails to other colors. That is why this mosque is called as a pink mosque.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting thing, if you look at this picture, right in the center, you can see a church. It
Yes.
is very, very, very unusual to find a picture of a church in the mosque. I mean, I have not seen any other example in any other mosque. The reason is in 1960. Yes.
No, I was going to say that caught my eye when I was going through Marguerite's pictures. That caught my eye. I was wondering, what is that about?
Yeah, you can see the cross on the top of that, which shows it's a church. In 19th century, the king of Iran, Nasr ad-Din Shah, for the first time formally visited Europe, and he received a lot of inspiration from the nature and the beauty of the architecture of the Europe. And then he sent some students, Iranian students that were studying arts, to be educated in Europe in art. And then after that, he asked them to come back Iran and to do the painting of the European landscapes and European architectures. And that is why it's like a landscape, like a village somewhere in Europe, which you can see a lot of these examples in this mosque. And also in other buildings from the same time, like the Golestan Palace in Tehran, which has been placed the king. Also, we have similar examples of these landscapes.
It's just gorgeous. And Marguerite, there are the windows you were talking about. And if you're there at a certain time, look at that Beautiful.
Exactly. Yeah, it's beautiful. Probably you should have been there earlier, but you can't avoid. There are such an amazing amount of tourists every time. But even with a lot of people, it's just amazing.
So, Dan and Catherine, I'm going to see if you had pictures of the same. I'm trying to, nope, that's not the pink mosque.
Yeah, I don't know if we sent them over, but we did get a couple of really, really nice shots of exactly what you were just looking at, with the lights streaming in. It's beautiful.
So I'm going to actually go to, I think it's a different mosque. So Dan and Catherine are going to kind of walk us through the meaning of this locale.
This is actually not a mosque.
It was in Kashan, wasn't it?
Yeah, this was exactly one of the noble houses in Kashan. And then you can see that it's raised, and then they also had underground, was walking around, and it was actually a cool way of preventing against earthquakes. But the house itself is there's the four sides of the house. So you see like the summer, winter, fall, spring side of the house. And Ali, feel free to jump me in with some of this. But also in the veranda there's a mirror hall. So you look up and yeah, Catherine, do you remember that one? Or?
Yeah, no, I forgot about that until you said that. But yeah, it was beautiful.
And the exterior is completely different than a mosque, Ali. Is that purposeful, that you don't decorate a home, a mansion, the way you would decorate a mosque?
Yes, the decoration is different. Here, this is a Tabatabai house, the city Kashan, 2 hours drive south of Tehran. In 19th century, he was a very famous merchant. Mm-hmm. And he built this beautiful house, which is, I think, almost like 5,000 square meters big, very big. It has like 6 courtyards around the house in the corners. And it has also a special yard for the servants who were working in this house. And the decoration in this house are shtuk. Are the stucco decoration, that the majority of the decoration that you see.
Is this inside the mansion now?
I think so. Yeah.
So you do some
I think
colors.
that was inside a bathhouse.
Yeah, that might have been exactly.
Yeah.
I remember that because we were taking pictures for the group across from us.
And I mean, there are so many scenes. You're eating pizza.
Yeah, that was our last night, or my last night in Tehran on the bridge, right when all the protesting started and the roads were shut down.
Yeah, this was right before the internet went down for a week.
So you guys had a little bit of drama. A little bit.
No internet, but everything else was all right.
Right.
Yeah, a little bit. I think Reza was pretty good about, steering us away from, where we shouldn't be at that point in time. And ironically, we were actually at the US embassy, which was, in past times a hot spot, but this protest had nothing to do with the US embassy. So, I think we were pretty far away from where things were happening.
Yeah, and I think that night we were far from our hotel and we needed to get back because I needed to go to the airport, and instead of taking a car, because I guess the roads were shut down in some places, we just took the subway back, which was easy. And then we were back to the hotel.
So Marguerite, we're going to go to Persepolis with you now.
Yes.
I'm going to be completely honest. I did minor in history in college, but I do not remember the history of Persepolis. Where does it stand in the history of all the conquerors that went through places like Iran? Who was this? Constantine? Who was this who created Persepolis?
No, it was not Constantine or Ali. No.
No, the Persian king Darius.
Darius.
Yes.
Oh, so the same Darius who was sort of running the Israel at the time of was it about 100 AD? I think Darius was there. I'm trying to remember which Roman emperor that was.
500 BC.
500.
500 BC. Yeah,
Okay.
Achaemenid's dynasty, the Persian Empire.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
It was actually founded by Cyrus the Great, who is that you can find it in the Bible and the holy books.
yes.
That he's famous that he abolished the slavery. He attacked to the Elamites, and he released the Jewish slaves, and he sent them back home to Jerusalem.
Yes.
And that king is very admired. He was the first Persian king of this empire, and later it was Cambyses, and after that, this is the Darius, the king that founded the Persepolis.
I did not realize that. Thank you. And I
And,
did study the Old and New Testament, and I do remember. I'm trying to remember which book in the Old Testament talks about how Cyrus was the savior from Babylonia. He went when he became king. He said, "Okay, we're done with this." So thank you for that reminder. I forgot it. What were you
I
going
think
to
the
say,
other
Neil?
thing too that this is known for is when Alexander the Great came in, and it was King Xerxes at the time, and so this was the stand where Alexander the Great fought Xerxes.
That's right. That's where I got the Roman part of it wrong. What was this like, Marguerite, in comparison to other great ruin sites that you've been to? Can you put them into any context in terms of when you were visiting? Was it part of just general history, or was there something more powerful and unique about seeing Persepolis?
I think it was more powerful and unique.
In what way?
In a way, well, that here really, how would I say, for me here really great history happened, or it was like a milestone in mankind, what was happening here. It was just, so we were just very, very grateful that we were able to be really at that place.
And who do we have here, Ali? Do you know? Is this Darius? Is this Cyrus? Who might this be? Because it's amazing. You in the other picture, you can barely start to make out all the engravings here, but quite a few of them are still visible. Up here on the right.
I only see now the picture of the palace.
Right. I know.
Yeah. This is this is like a soldier, like a general of the Persian Empire, that they are called as immortals. They are immortals, and a very strong army as the Persian Empire.
So I'm seeing some guardrails. Are you allowed to walk through the complex?
Yes, you can go
Yes,
inside,
yes.
but you cannot actually cross these barrels. Yeah, you can be inside the palaces to see the reliefs and all the carvings.
Yeah, I think one of the coolest reliefs over there, I don't know if you have one of the pictures of it, but it was called the League of the Gate of All Nations. And so what it was is it was a big wall, and you could see all the different kind of tribes from that time, and they would all come and they would bring a gift, and that gift was something kind of that was specific to their nation. And so it's a really cool way to see at that point in time kind of all of the different tribes and what they were known for and their specialties, and, that they came together over there. So that was pretty cool over there.
It's also interesting to see that on some of the reliefs, you can actually see graffiti from like the 1600s, 1700s, where people signed and put the year, and it's etched in, which is something you can see across the world, but you don't often see that from the 1600s.
No. Here, I experience it that here, Catherine, in the Catskills, when you go up to certain peaks here in the Catskills, you see people who've chiseled the year that they climbed the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The landscape, the gorgeous landscape, Ali. How is this different from Yazd? When you walked me through Yazd, it's kind of like a a high desert plateau. How is this region different?
Excuse me, you asked me?
I was asking you, how is
Uh,
this region
yeah.
different in topography, geography?
Okay.
It looks quite different from Yazd, which was more of a high desert plateau.
You mean comparing Shiraz to Yazd?
Yeah.
Yeah, Yazd is surrounded by desert,
Uh-huh.
and it has a dry climate, and we have a very few rainfall. It is like 1,300. The altitude is almost 1,300 meters, but still very hot summers and also very cold winters. That's the feature of the places that usually surrounded by desert in the dry climates.
And I understand Shiraz gets into the 90s from about May till September. It's a pretty warm city.
Yes, yeah. And not warmer than Yazd, but still hot summers. Shiraz has hot summers, and during the spring it's very lovely, especially because of the blossoms of the oranges, which makes this city, the smell, the nice smell goes around this beautiful Shiraz during the late March and April. That is like the best time to visit Shiraz. As you walk in the street, usually there are few rains sometimes, which is mixed with this smell, nice smell, and the city becomes very romantic and lovely.
So now I think we're finally heading over to Yazd. This looks a little familiar. Are we now finally in Yazd?
This looks like
Yes, we are
Yes.
in my beautiful city.
City of Wind Towers.
Exactly.
Yes.
Towers.
So there we are. Remind me, because you did take me here, Ali, about a month or so ago. What is this building?
This is, I guess, this is the hotel. Yeah.
Okay.
Am I right,
Yeah, that's what I
Daniel?
was thinking. I
Your
think it is the
hotel.
hotel. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, this is because most of these houses they're very similar. They look each other. And it's sometimes very hard to differentiate the architecture.
So Dan
So
and
this is the
Catherine.
Lale. Yeah.
Dan and Catherine, for people who might be wondering, what is the lodging like? How would you describe the hotels?
Ooh, I think almost everyone we stayed in is kind of like a palace in itself. And I think, like Ali said, one of the nice things that there are all of these old houses, they've been kind of restored really, really well, which is really awesome to see. And they've been preserved, and now they're opened up as hotels. And I mean, they really are something special.
And I think
Catherine,
we only stayed in, I think, like 2-star hotels too, which is like an important note. That, I mean, I remember the one in Isfahan was gorgeous, and it was restored from like, I think, the 16th or 17th century. And I mean, if you stayed in a 2-star hotel in the US, I think you'd be looking at, like a roadside inn with bugs, versus here where it was gorgeous and all the food was so good. And yeah, it was really nice.
Marguerite, what was your experience with the hotels?
Absolutely the same experience. So we tried to pick small traditional houses, rebuilt to hotels, and they were absolutely gorgeous, really, really gorgeous. The atmosphere was very nice there. They were fantastic, run by absolutely friendly, amazing people, and breakfast we had there was amazingly delicious, and everything was just really lovely.
Finally, Ali, we finally have a picture. You caught up with the group.
This we went to dinner in Yazd.
Oh yes.
I think one of the most impressive places that I've seen over there. And Ali, you walked in and they knew you, and I think we got the treatment of a king. So maybe if you want to tell about that place, yeah.
Yeah, this is on the right. This is Moshir Hotel. It's a traditional hotel, very beautiful, and this hotel has an icon. The famous icon are in the just middle of the picture, which you can see two parrots, which also very famous parrots. And we had a very special, lovely dinner here with my beautiful wife, Fariba, and also guide Reza.
Hmm.
It was a lovely night.
So what is the why two parrots? Is there a meaning behind that, or is just their icon?
No, they're just the icon.
Mhm. And again, we were talking a little earlier about the rooftop culture. I see quite a few pictures, Ali, in your Instagram and Facebook pages where there quite a bit of activity goes on the rooftops. This is, I'm
Yes.
assuming, at the hotel.
Uh, these are all the houses and the hotels, so they're all connected, you know.
Because here in this
Yes.
looks like a couch in the back over here.
Yeah, I think that's a cafe that we just popped into. So Reza knew a really nice cafe that was tucked up in one of the buildings.
Probably art cafe.
Yeah, this
Yeah,
is the art. This is the art house. You can search
exactly.
it.
Yep.
Mm.
It's a cozy place, very lovely, very atmospheric place, especially during the evening time. That's one of my best suggestion for any visitors that they want to visit Yaz, to be on the rooftop of this art house. It's like a traditional historical
True.
house in Fahadan neighborhood, which is one of the main touristic neighborhood of Yaz.
And for anybody who wasn't there 5 weeks ago, Ali, these structures, the one above your guide's head, and you can see them out in the distance, they collect air, push it down
Okay.
into the buildings, and then cool off the buildings?
Yeah, as Daniel said, a very nice description of Yazd. The city of Yazd is the city of the wind catchers, or we call it as bud gears. The air is sucked down through the holes, through these towers, and it comes down in the rooms, in the hall, so it cools the area. As I already said, Yazd has a very bad hot temperature during the summertime, almost sometimes reaches to 45 centigrades.
Oh,
So we need to find a solution, to find a way to survive. And thanks to the great architects, over time, the history of wind catchers is more than 1,000 years, and Iranians were the first people who invented this system. And this system is very simple. It's all made by adobe, which is mud and straw,
right.
plus the woods inside the structure, which is working like a skeleton of the structure. Yeah.
Hmm.
So it exists on top of the houses, mosques, and different buildings.
How walkable are Iranian cities for everybody? Do is it, is it your traditional, small alleyways and interconnecting places? Is it charming like that? Are there broad boulevards? What is it like, maneuvering around once you get to your hotel and want to go see something?
Uh, Yaz is very different by the other cities in Iran because the old town, okay, which is now registered as the World Heritage Site by UNESCO, it's
Right.
actually separated by the new town. In the new
Hmm.
town, okay, we have wide boulevards and the modern streets. But the old town, we can see that all the buildings and all the structures are made by adobe, okay, which is almost like 1,000 years old. And
Hmm.
it was actually rebuilt and restored over the time. And the alleys are very narrow and they are all interconnected. And it's one of the top experience of any visitors in Yaz that they say it's very interesting to get lost in those, interconnected alleys, because it's like a confusion. It's like a game that you get lost and then found again and lost again and found again. And
That's the way I like to
Lovely.
travel. It's very hard for me to stick with a tour group. I want to disappear from them after 20 or 30 minutes because I want to wander. So Yazd is definitely my kind of city. Marguerite, do any of these pictures look familiar?
Yes, absolutely.
Tell us
It's
who's
also
in the
in
pictures
Yas,
here.
Dolarabat Gardens. And here we catch up with Ali and his wife Fariba. So here we finally met each other and also in person. And it was very nice.
Now, the three of you are covering your heads. So what was that like, Catherine and Marguerite, that, there is a respect for the local culture that women should have their heads covered. Was it strange? Was it, how did you adapt to that?
I would say it was strange coming back because the first day out here, I also wanted to cover my head.
Yeah, I thought it was, different, but I think it, makes you feel more of what somebody there has to do.
Yep.
We have the privilege of dressing and wearing and doing whatever we want. And a lot of women, don't have that there. But it wasn't a big deal by any means to wear a headscarf.
Right.
No, it was.
And what was this building again?
Sorry?
This is Dolat Abad Garden. It's one of the Persian gardens, also registered by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site.
And the building itself is what? Was that a home that the gardens were attached to?
It belongs to the ruler of Yazd 300 years ago. It's like the same time I explained about the citadel you saw in Shiraz. So that's the same time, but different ruler in Yazd called Muhammad Taqi Khan, that it was like his living place, and also the center of the government. Here you can see the highest wind catcher or wind tower in Iran, which is like 33 meters high, and it is on the top of this 8-sided building. So during the summertime, the king with the friends, they bring the watermelon, they have a pillow to lean, and next to the small fountain, they listen to the sound of the water, eating melon, and also getting cooled by this tower, and they have a lovely time. That was the system to, to chill.
Literally, to chill, yes. And where are we here? Is this inside that octagon building?
This is the outside. Outside the building. Which one? This?
Yeah.
This picture. No, I guess it is in Kashan. It's the traditional house.
Yes.
I guess the same house that you saw the picture of Daniel and Catherine in Kashan, Tabatabai house. It's
Gotcha.
inside the room, inside the hall,
Wow.
hall of the house.
That's a pretty big hall.
Yeah.
So if we can, Marguerite, well, you went with two female friends.
More or less 3. We had also, I'm working for an international research institution in Austria, and Iran is one of our member countries. So I have some scientific colleagues, friends in Iran, and one of the nice ladies, she also joined us on our tour.
I'm going to try to pull up a picture of the gardens that Ali just told us about and try to go back to that now. Ali, you said that the weather can be extremely warm at times. What are the best times to go to Iran? Is there a time of year that's better than others?
Spring and fall, these are the 2 high seasons to travel to Iran. However, winter is not that cold, especially I guess for European tourists. The winter is also lovely. I mean, like, for example, January holidays are, I mean, the New Year holidays, something like that, the Christmas time. But the best time actually is late March, April, and also November, October. These are the best time to visit Iran.
It's just the stained glass windows are just amazing.
Exactly. That's the garden I talked about in Yaz Doladabad garden. It's inside the eight-sided, the octagon thing. That it's very lovely.
And what would this
Then
have
there is
been
a
below
sunlight.
here? At the bottom of the picture, would this have been a pool to dip your feet in? What would that have been? A fountain?
No, actually, this is the fountain.
Okay.
This is the fountain. That they had a special system for that fountain because of the difference of levels. The water poured into the lower levels, and after going through the very narrow pipes, it has a pressure to work and start as a fountain. So there was no pump, no electricity, and they had this clever techniques in order to make the natural fountains.
So let's talk food. What was the food like? I'm fairly adventurous when it comes to food, but I have no idea outside of some of the stereotypical Persian types of food, what that would look like. So I'm going to try to find that picture. There we are.
I was wondering when you would bring it up. A trip to Iran is not complete without the food.
So tell me all about the food, because I will eat there when I get there. What was it like, Dan? Was it something familiar to you? The flavors, the grains,
I mean, familiar coming from New York, like we've tried a couple of, Persian dishes and things like that. So I think we had a sense of what to expect. And some of the advice that I got was definitely go to one of the best places for DG over there. So I would highly recommend try Sindizi while there. And Reza actually showed us there's a whole process involved of how to get it and prepare it and eat it. But a lot of saffron, a lot of spices, a lot of like different types of stews. So really, really delicious food. And
what is DZ? What is it? Is it a meat dish? Is it a grain dish? What is it?
So DZ, it's a meat dish. It's some like lamb with tomato and garlic and onions and saffron and spices. And so it comes as a stew over, and then there's rice on the side. And then so you mash it up, and then you take with some bread, and you're able to just scoop up some of the paste that you've mashed up. And it's one of the best things I've eaten. Ali, I don't know if you would agree or if you would add to that, but I was a fan.
Ali?
It's a good dish, yeah. You have to.
And once again,
very lovely.
We're in a cafe bakery, and this could be in the middle of Manhattan somewhere. This is, it feels very comfortable to me.
Yeah,
what are we drinking here, Marguerite? What is this green beverage you're drinking?
I see it. I don't see it very clear because I have the sun shining on my screen, but it was like a fruit cocktail. Of course, a non-alcoholic fruit cocktail, but I can't really remember. Was it with kiwi, or I really, really can't remember.
Ali, can you describe what they might have been drinking? It almost looks like a smoothie.
Yeah, something like that.
I'm not sure.
But again, for anybody,
the coffee shops, yes.
But anybody who's hesitant and thinking, having some sort of, presupposing what life is like in Iran, and when you see these pictures, what you realize is This is no different than my own neighborhood. A buddy of mine owns a coffee shop. He's from South Africa. He just opened his coffee shop in Louisville, Kentucky. And, he says, Robin says, traveling all over the world, it all kind of blends into the same. His coffee shop, has some African elements to it, but it looks like a coffee shop, here in the Hudson Valley. So much of our world is the same. Ali, why so much English? It literally says cafe and bakery in English.
Yeah.
Is it why so
Yes.
purposeful?
Excuse me, I didn't get you.
I'm wondering why I'm not seeing more Farsi or more of the words being written in an Arabic script. Why is there so much English all over the place?
Okay, actually, these pictures are exceptions
Okay.
because these
Okay.
are the touristic places. Okay.
Gotcha. Okay.
I mean, very modern luxury, and touristic places. In the normal places, I mean, 90% of places you cannot find a letter of English.
Okay.
Right.
That's
Right.
and Marguerite, Catherine, did you guys get to go to some of the places that weren't so touristy? And if so, what was that like?
Yeah,
Well,
I think oh, go ahead.
This is the bazaar in Kashan.
So a little bit less touristy, though it is touristy.
Right.
Catherine?
So the cafe in Yazd, I think we just visited because the owner of the cafe, I think, was a good friend of Reza.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite meals we had was in Tehran in the bazaar. We went to, it was like raining outside, and we went upstairs into some place that I think was much more local. We were definitely the only sort of tourist there, and just got a ton of food, and it was so good. But definitely, different than a more tourist place.
And
Oh, that
how
place is
easy
fantastic.
how easy was it to order and communicate? Was their English was very good, or?
There, our wonderful guide ordered everything for us.
Okay.
So Mohammed Reza did that all.
So getting a good guide is still a great idea.
Well, for Americans, it's a must. We
Yeah.
have to, but I think Reza was our lifesaver. So I don't think we'd have wanted to go anywhere without him anyway, because he really got us through ordering and getting us around and all that. So
Now, Ali, I remember from the Rick Steves documentary, he had to have a tour guide with him everywhere. Is that the rule? Is that tourists have to have a licensed tour guide to wander about?
Very good question. Actually, for 3 nationalities, there are some limitations. These nationalities are Americans, British, and Canadians. These 3 nationalities, they have be part of an organized tour conducted by a travel agency. So a tour guide should accompany them through the whole tour. But for the other nationalities, they are free and they don't need a tour guide.
Gotcha. So here we are now in a fairly rural location. Ali, what were these? Where are these pictures from, and what is Catherine doing here?
The last picture.
Yes, she's there's these rock outcroppings and it looks like something's been carved into
this
them.
picture, the green area, because I have a this is the necropolis. It is like 8 kilometers far from Persepolis, near Shiraz, and we have the tombs of the Achaemenid kings, 4 kings, like Artaxerxes, Darius II. So these are like the 4 tombs, and beneath the tombs we have some reliefs, mostly from the 3rd century AD, which shows the coronation of the kings on the bas reliefs. I don't know if you have a picture of
I don't think so. I think
relieved,
that was the only.
but
Oh,
they're
actually, I
very
think it was
wonderful
earlier.
that I
Yeah,
ca-
there was a picture earlier. I'll escape out of it and go find it right now. But we did. We had it much earlier, or maybe not. I know we had it up before. Actually, you know
yeah,
what?
you just
It was one of Marguerite's pictures. That's why it's not here.
yeah, you just need to Google necropolis. Okay, so you will see all those different beautiful pictures, like the famous relief of a Sassanid king in 3rd century is Shapur, who overcome the Romans, the Valerian, and Philip, and he conquered the Roman emperors. And you can see a very huge relief that Shapur is sitting on the horse, and the Roman emperors, Valerian, is bending, and that is like the highlight of necropolis.
It kind of reminds me, I mean, obviously the scene is much different than Petra, but or Luxor, that, all these cultures used these stone outcroppings to create these tombs for their rulers. I'm trying to find that picture, but I think this is actually over at Persepolis, so I don't think that's the same. Well, we're almost at 11 o'clock, and I've kept you all for quite a long time. Marguerite, you said that you were actually supposed to be in Iran this month, right? You
In
were
May,
going
beginning
back.
of May, we want to go back. Yeah, I think we will have to postpone it for next year.
And why is it, after your trip 2 years ago, why is it you're so ready to go back?
Because it was just a really, really very special, amazing trip. I think one of the best ones we ever had in our lives. We have seen so many beautiful landscapes, rich history, gorgeous places, and it's the people. I think we just came there as strangers, but we left as friends.
And I've heard that about Ali. Catherine and Dan, you guys have been wandering for quite a few years, telling me a little bit about how you're not the couple that goes, you do go to some of the traditional places, but you go far afield. If you put Iran into context to all of your other journeys, how would you describe the time that you spent there?
I think for me, it's probably near the top. I think that, when we went, it was kind of in between sort of US and Iranian relations going up and down and up and down. And I think that, everyone you meet there is just so, so kind and really wants you to know that, as we say here, the government doesn't necessarily represent the people. And I think that being in a place that, especially coming from the US, you hear so much sort of negativity about, and really having nothing but like unbelievable kindness and generosity shared or put towards you, is a really wonderful experience. And I would love to go back sometime.
Oh. Now, Dan, at the beginning, you said, you're an American Jew, you're going to Iran. Obviously, there's a little bit of animosity in some respects in that relationship. What did you come away with from your experience there?
Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting thing is exactly what you said. Like, most of the time when you go somewhere, you kind of have a sense of what you're going to get. And I think with Iran, it was, to me, one of the very, very few places I've gone where I was just so unbelievably and pleasantly surprised, that it wasn't what I had in my head at all. It kind of really changed, my perception a lot, which was great. And like you said, to that, when I went the first, couple days, we were, me and Catherine were even talking, should we not, tell people that we're American, should we keep things quiet? And Reza was like, I don't know why you would, but, and so, we started telling, quietly a couple people, and everyone was so open and friendly to us that you kind of realize that whatever's happening, with governments and in the global stage, the people there just didn't care. Like, for them, we were, you know, there, and they loved having us as tourists, and unbelievably friendly and, you know, nice, and we got into some great conversations and all of that. So you know, from my side, it was a really, really pleasant surprise that there actually wasn't any of that animosity at the ground level of, you know, seeing the people and interacting.
It really is. It's I don't think I've ever not had that experience where once I just opened up, you know, maybe you get a little bit of resistance from some people because there's a on the spectrum of life, there's always going to be some people at either end, but most of us are in the middle. And once you start to open up to somebody, it's, you know, we're all the same, and everybody eventually makes that connection. Well, Marguerite, it was so wonderful to see you again. I know the last time we had a little bit more technical issues with your Wi-Fi and your computer, so it was so wonderful to hear more about your trip this time. Daniel and Catherine, you're in the heart, the epicenter of all of this craziness. You know, just obviously, you know, the best of health and safety and you know, the future to the both of you. I cannot wait to hear about your next trip. I want to see it somewhere, either in photos or video or something. It is so wonderful to see two young people who are just embracing the world and going out and just saying, okay, whatever it's going to be, it's going to be, but we're going to go experience it with courage. That and you, Ali, have become such a warm and wonderful supporter. I will get to Iran, and I promise you, you're the only person I want to travel with.
You will be always welcome here. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your support.
You've opened my eyes to the beauty of Iran. I had no understanding of what Iran was like outside of Tehran, because obviously that's where so much of our you know, our news media comes from, and to see your beautiful country is just amazing.
It will be our pleasure. I want to ask you if you have time. I want kindly ask Catherine or Daniel.
Please do.
To talk a brief. Please, can you give us a brief explanation about your visa? Because there are many Americans who really love to visit Iran, but they're very worried about getting visa. And that's the first question for any Americans who like to visit Iran. And if you can share your experience, if this was a hard challenge for you, or how did it work, please? If there is a time, please.
Sure. Yeah, I think that it was easy on our end. You know, I think the most difficult part was deciding on our itinerary and where we wanted to go. And once that was all settled, you know, we worked with Ali Reza, and he sent us a letter of invitation after the MFA in Iran had approved it. So then we just took that, an application and a money order to the post office, and mailed it to the Pakistani embassy in Washington, D.C. And I think a week later, they mailed it back and we had our visa.
Yeah, I think the timing is probably the trickiest part, because when you apply, you need to know the exact dates of when you're going to be there. And it's tricky to plan that before you have the visa. Because we were going to go originally a few weeks before we wound up going. And then we wound up having to actually move it because we were worried that we wouldn't get the visa in time. So I would just say, give it time, because as much as we were lucky and they were really quick, I think the recommended times of like what you could do are like 2 to 3 weeks, and they sent it to us in 2 days. So it's just a huge range. So I would say the process itself is really probably not that difficult. You know, go through the Pakistani embassy, and actually the Pakistani embassy even has a phone number, and I called and spoke directly to them, and they were super helpful. But do give time.
Yeah, you need to apply. I think it's like 3 months in advance of your actual trip. So
exactly.
I think Dan and I are both used to traveling much more aloof, but it's something that, you know, especially for Americans, Canadians, and British passport holders, you have to go through the process.
So help me understand. So you submit when you're going to travel, but they allow you to adjust it, because if they are slow to approve, they understand that you may have to move your travel dates?
No.
Yeah,
So we had to reapply, I believe, when we moved the dates. I think that it was easier, but I remember corresponding with Ali Reza, and He definitely had to resubmit the application, but we had already been approved one time. So I think there was a little bit of doubt in both of our minds if we would be approved to begin with. But once that happened, it was much more certain, and he was assuring us along the way that it would be fine and when we would get it. But it is different than going to many places or just going into an embassy and saying, I want a visa. It's definitely a process that has to be followed.
So when you say you went through the Pakistani embassy, it was the Pakistani embassy in New York City?
No, so you can only go through the Pakistani embassy in Washington, D.C.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I was actually in Pakistan about a month before, and I remember Ali Reza was trying to convince me to go to the embassy in Lahore or Islamabad to try to get my visa for Iran, but decided to come back to the US and do that.
I remember when Rick Steves was planning his documentary, he was traveling in Europe. He had alternate plans. And I think his blog says it was at the last second that I think he went through Turkey's embassy or something, or maybe it was Pakistan's embassy in Turkey. And he said it came at the last minute and they were like, great, we're going. But I do remember that there was some complications. You have to be aware that Ali, so I'm obviously doing a commercial for you here, but obviously working with somebody like you who understands that and can then work on the back end to shift, okay, wait a second, we need to get you new airline tickets. We need to change your check-in for the hotels. That's obviously one of the benefits of working with somebody like you is you can on the ground shift that as the embassies sort of coordinate the actual travel documents, right?
Yes, actually, for Americans, if they're outside US, they can collect a visa in any Iran embassy around the world.
Gotcha.
So if, for example, they're visiting China and after that they have a flight to Iran, they can collect their visa in Iran embassy in Beijing or I don't know, in different cities that there is a consulate, Iran consulate.
That sounds like what Rick Steves had said he had done, is that he collected it at the consulate in a country that was close to Iran at the time. But he said he was literally uncertain if he was going to get there until the last minute. So a little bit more planning and definitely go with the experts. Don't do it. Don't try to do it yourself.
Yes.
Thank you.
100%.
Thank you all for a wonderful Sunday. This was such a great way to start Sunday, to just immerse ourselves in a beautiful place with people who are ready to break down our, stereotypes and assumptions about a country that certainly is remarkable, just completely extraordinary. So thank you all today.
Yeah. Thank you.
Very
Happy
much.
to
Okay, guys.
be here. Yeah.
Ali, we'll
See you.
talk again soon.
I appreciate you, dear Richard. Thank you for the support. I
Always.
also appreciate dear Margaret, dear Catherine and Daniel for the participation. And unfortunately, the Iranophobia exists around the world. On the media, Iran, you cannot find a real Iran on the media. The media, as you see, is all about the terroristic bombing, missiles, things. But as the tourists, they come Iran and they see the real Iran, they will change their mind. And our tourists are our green ambassadors, that they will go back home and they will tell their friends what is the real Iran. The real Iran is not something that you see on the TV. I really appreciate. Thank you so much.
No,
You're
thank you.
always my guest, and you will be always welcomed in Iran. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Marguerite,
you.
thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.